Leyla, he said, not looking up from his phone. This meeting doesn't require your presence. My stomach tightened. I'd been finance director at NewPoint Technologies for 3 years. Every quarterly financial review included me. Every single one. I prepared half these reports, I said, keeping my voice level. Now he looked up. His eyes were the color of slate, and just as warm. The executive team has decided to streamline our review process. We'll loop you in on anything relevant. Streamline. The word tasted bitter. Around the table, 5 other executives shifted in their seats. Dennis Kowalski from operations wouldn't meet my eyes. Tasha Monroe from legal studied her notepad with sudden fascination. Only CFO Warren Yu looked uncomfortable, his jaw working like he wanted to say something but couldn't quite force it out. I don't understand, I said. What's changed? Malcolm set his phone down with deliberate care. You ask uncomfortable questions, Leyla. You challenge assumptions. That's valuable in its place, but during strategic reviews, we need cohesion. Unity of vision. He smiled, but it didn't reach those slate eyes. You understand. No, I didn't understand. But something in the set of his shoulders, the way his fingers drummed once against the table's edge, told me this conversation was over before it started. I just nodded. Good, Malcolm said, already dismissing me, already turning back to Warren. Now, about the Cascade merger projections. I walked out, and the door clicked shut behind me with a finality that made my chest ache. My office felt smaller after that. The walls seemed to close in as I sat at my desk, staring at the financial dashboard on my screen. Numbers scrolled past, revenue projections, expense ratios, capital investments. Everything I'd been tracking for months. Why would Malcolm exclude me now? Right before the end-of-year review? Right when the board would be scrutinizing every line item? My phone buzzed. A text from my daughter, Mom, did you remember my field trip money? $45 by Friday. I rubbed my temples. $45. A nothing amount for Malcolm Pierce, who drove a Tesla and vacationed in the Maldives. For me, on a director's salary supporting 2 kids after my divorce, it meant juggling payments and hoping the car didn't need repairs this month. Got it, sweetheart, I typed back. The lie sat heavy in my gut. I pulled up the Q3 reports again, the ones Malcolm didn't want me reviewing. My cursor hovered over the Cascade merger file. Warren had prepared it, but Malcolm had been unusually involved, attending meetings that normally bored him senseless. I clicked it open. At first, everything looked standard. NewPoint acquiring Cascade Systems, a smaller tech firm with promising cloud infrastructure patents. Purchase price, $47 million. Financing structure, combination of cash reserves and leveraged debt. Then I saw it. A footnote buried on page 17. An addendum about adjusted valuation metrics and revised asset assessment. The language was deliberately opaque, the kind of corporate speak designed to obscure rather than clarify. I cross-referenced the Cascade valuation with their public filings from 6 months ago. The numbers didn't match. Not even close. According to their SEC documents, Cascade's total asset value was $28 million. So why were we paying $47 million? My heart hammered against my ribs. I dug deeper, pulling archived emails, board minutes, preliminary due diligence reports. The deeper I went, the less sense it made. Or rather, it made perfect sense in the worst possible way. Cascade Systems CEO was Philip Crane. I Googled him. Philip Crane had previously served as COO at Vertex Innovations. Malcolm Pierce had been on Vertex's board. I sat back, the pieces clicking together with sickening clarity. That night, I barely slept. I kept seeing Malcolm's face, that cold smile. You ask uncomfortable questions. My bedroom was dark except for the glow of my laptop. I'd brought the financial files home, technically a violation of company policy, but my instinct screamed that leaving them on the network was dangerous. At 2:47 a.m., I found the smoking gun. An internal memo, accidentally CC'd to a shared drive, from Malcolm to Warren, proceed with Cascade at agreed price point. Board approval is secured. Ensure documentation emphasizes strategic value over asset valuation. P. Crane requires full amount for his cooperation on the Meridian project. Meridian. I searched every database, every file. Nothing. No project by that name existed in NewPoint's official records. But $19 million of shareholder money was being funneled somewhere, hidden behind inflated acquisition costs. My hand shook as I screenshotted everything. Saved copies to 3 different encrypted drives. Sent files to my personal email with cryptic subject lines. What was I going to do with this? Who could I even tell? Warren reported to Malcolm. The board chair, Douglas Brennan, golfed with Malcolm every Thursday. HR existed to protect the company, not employees who discovered their COO was potentially committing fraud. I thought about my kid sleeping down the hall. Mia, 13, who wanted to be a veterinarian. Jackson, 10, who still believed the world was fundamentally fair. What would happen if I stayed quiet? What would happen if I didn't? The next morning, I arrived at the office at 6:30 a.m., before most of the executive floor stirred to life. The building's HVAC hummed its lonely pre-dawn song. My footsteps echoed in the empty corridor. I needed to talk to Warren. But first, I needed more evidence. Something concrete that couldn't be explained away as misunderstanding or clerical error. Malcolm was brilliant at spinning narratives, turning accusations into paranoia, making questioners look unreasonable. I logged into the expense reporting system. If Malcolm was running a shadow operation, he'd need to fund it somehow. Private meetings. Travel. Payments that didn't fit normal patterns. There. A series of wire transfers from NewPoint's operational account to something called Meridian Consulting Group. 5 transfers over 8 months. $50,000 each. $250,000 total. The authorization signature was Malcolm's. The business justification, strategic advisory services for market expansion initiatives. I pulled the board meeting minutes for each month those transfers occurred. Not one mention of Meridian Consulting. Not one presentation on market expansion requiring outside advisors. My pulse quickened. I cross-referenced Malcolm's calendar with the transfer dates. Each payment coincided with a day Malcolm had blocked as external meeting, confidential. I was building a timeline. A pattern. A trail that even the most skilled corporate attorney would struggle to explain away. But I needed one more thing. Bank records. Proof of where that money ultimately went. That's when I remembered something. 3 months ago, our auditing firm had flagged some discrepancies in our quarterly expenditure reports. Minor things, they'd said. Probably data entry errors. Malcolm had personally met with the audit team, and the flags had disappeared from the final report. I searched my archived emails. Found the original audit draft before Malcolm's intervention. The flagged items weren't minor at all. They were systematic. Payments to shell companies. Consulting fees with no deliverables. Travel expenses that didn't match any employee-submitted reports. The auditors had noticed. Malcolm had silenced them. My office phone rang, shattering the silence. I jumped, heart racing. Leyla Jefferson. Ms. Jefferson, this is Candace from HR. Mr. Pierce would like to see you in his office at 9 o'clock. The professional cheerfulness in her voice made my skin crawl. What's this regarding? He didn't specify. Should I confirm your attendance? What choice did I have? Yes. I'll be there. I hung up and stared at the phone. Malcolm knew I'd been digging. He had to. Network activity logs, file access records, someone in IT could have flagged my overnight research. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the flash drive where I'd stored everything. Evidence of fraud. Proof of corruption. My insurance policy. Or my death sentence, depending on how this played out. Malcolm's office occupied the northwest corner of the executive floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. His desk was glass and chrome, minimalist except for a single photo, Malcolm shaking hands with the governor at some charity gala. He stood when I entered, all practiced warmth. Leyla, thanks for coming. Coffee? No, thank you. Please, sit. He gestured to the leather chairs facing his desk. I sat, perching on the edge, muscles tense. Malcolm settled into his chair with the ease of someone utterly comfortable with power. I wanted to check in with you. Yesterday's meeting, I sensed some tension. I value open communication on my team. His team. As if excluding me from financial reviews was an act of inclusion. I was surprised to be left out, I said carefully. Understandable. Let me explain the reasoning. He leaned forward, all earnest sincerity. The board has concerns about information leakage. We're in sensitive negotiations with several potential acquisition targets. The fewer people involved in preliminary discussions, the better we can control the narrative. Cascade isn't preliminary. We're weeks from closing. Exactly. Which is why we need absolute message discipline. His smile never wavered. You're a valued member of this organization, Leyla. This isn't personal. It's strategic. Everything he said sounded reasonable. Logical. If I didn't know what I knew, I might have believed him. I understand, I said. Good. Because I'd hate to lose you. Talented finance directors are hard to find. He paused, letting that sink in. Especially ones with your specific expertise in our systems and processes. The implied threat was subtle but unmistakable. You're valuable because you know too much. And because you know too much, leaving would be complicated. I'm not planning on going anywhere, I said. Excellent. He stood, conversation over. Oh, one more thing. IT mentioned some unusual network activity on your account. Late-night file access, downloads to external drives. I'm sure it's work-related, but our security protocols require documentation for any after-hours data transfers. My mouth went dry. I've been preparing year-end projections. Some files are too large to work with efficiently on the network. Of course. Just make sure you submit the proper forms to the security office. We take data protection seriously. You understand. There was that phrase again. You understand. I understood perfectly. He was watching me. He knew I'd been digging. And he was giving me a chance to back down before this became ugly. I left his office with my hands trembling and my mind racing. Warren arrived at 7:15, startled to find me waiting outside his office. Leyla, he said, fumbling with his key card. Early start? We need to talk about Cascade. His face went carefully blank. That's being handled at the executive level. I know what's happening, Warren. I know about Meridian. I know about the wire transfers. I know about the audit flags that magically disappeared. He froze, key card halfway to the reader. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he opened the door and gestured me inside. His office was twice the size of mine, with windows overlooking the city skyline. Morning light painted everything gold and false. You shouldn't be looking into this, he said quietly, not sitting down, not inviting me to. Why are we overpaying by $19 million? Leyla. Where's the Meridian project? What is Philip Crane's cooperation worth that kind of money? And why did you let Malcolm bury the audit findings? Warren's composure cracked. He gripped the back of his desk chair, knuckles white. You need to drop this. Right now. Today. Pretend you never saw anything. Is that what you're doing? Pretending? I'm surviving, he snapped. I'm keeping my job and my pension and my ability to pay my mortgage. Do you know what happens to people who challenge Malcolm Pierce? Ask Carol Hendrickson Legal. Oh wait, you can't, she was let go last year after questioning his expense reports. Carol. I remembered her vaguely. She'd been at NewPoint for 15 years, then suddenly gone. Mutual departure, the company announcement had said. There was someone before her too, Warren continued, his voice hollow. Gregory Lansing. VP of Internal Audit. 5 years ago. He found irregularities in Malcolm's travel reimbursements. Small stuff, couple $1,000. Gregory wanted to escalate it. 2 weeks later, he was fired for cause. Sexual harassment allegations from a contractor who worked in the building for exactly 3 days before disappearing. My stomach turned. Malcolm fabricated harassment claims? I don't know. Maybe they were real. Maybe Gregory was terrible. Or maybe Malcolm has a network of people willing to do whatever he needs to protect himself. Warren finally sat, suddenly looking exhausted. What I know is this, Malcolm Pierce always wins. Always. And people who try to stop him get destroyed. This is fraud, Warren. This isn't expense account padding. This is $19 million in shareholder money being stolen. This is business. But he wouldn't look at me. Malcolm has connections you can't imagine. Board members, investors, politicians. You think you're protecting the company? You'll be gone before you can finish the sentence. With a non-disclosure agreement and no reference and a reputation as a troublemaker that'll follow you everywhere. So we just let him steal millions? We survive, Warren repeated, and this time his voice broke slightly. We keep our heads down and we survive. I have twins starting college next year, Leyla. I can't afford integrity. The honesty of it gutted me. Malcolm called me into his office this morning, I said. He knows I've been investigating. Warren's face went pale. What did he say? He threatened me. Politely. Professional. But it was a threat. Then you know what you have to do. Delete everything. Apologize for overstepping. Tell him you were just being thorough and you understand now that it's not your concern. I can't do that. Then what's your plan? Warren demanded. Go to Douglas? He's been friends with Malcolm for 20 years. Go to the board? Half of them owe Malcolm favors. Go to the press? You'll be sued into oblivion before the story even runs. I can go to the SEC. Silence. Warren stared at me like I'd suggested burning the building down. You're serious. There are whistleblower protections. Federal regulations about retaliation. Leyla. He leaned forward. Listen to me very carefully. Those protections work in theory. In practice, they're tissue paper. Malcolm will make your life hell. Even if you win eventually, the process will destroy you. Years of depositions and legal battles and living under suspicion. No company will hire you. Your name will be synonymous with disloyal. Is that what you want for your kids? I thought about Mia and Jackson. Their stability. Their future. The college funds I'd been building slowly, painfully, putting aside whatever I could. What kind of mother was I if I risked all that? What kind of mother was I if I didn't? I haven't decided anything yet, I said finally. Warren nodded slowly. Be smart, Leyla. Please. Be smart. I left his office feeling like I'd swallowed glass. For 2 days, I moved through the office like a ghost. I attended meetings, reviewed budgets, approved expense reports. Every interaction felt surreal, like I was watching myself from a distance. Malcolm passed me in the hallway once. Leyla, he said warmly, as if nothing had happened. How's that Q4 forecasting coming? On schedule, I managed. Excellent. We value your dedication. The gaslighting was almost artful. At home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Mia asked if I was okay. You seem stressed, Mom. Just work stuff, honey. Is it about money? Because I can skip the field trip if. No. I pulled her into a hug. You're going on that field trip. I promise. Jackson wandered in, clutching his worn copy of a comic book. Mom, why do bad guys always lose in stories but not in real life? The question hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean? Kyle's dad got fired from his job because his boss took credit for his work. That's not fair. But his boss didn't get in trouble. He got promoted. Jackson looked up at me with those wide, trusting eyes. You said people who do bad things get punished. Sometimes, I said carefully, it takes time. Sometimes good people have to be brave and speak up to make sure justice happens. But what if speaking up is scary? It usually is, buddy. That's what makes it brave. He seemed satisfied with that answer. Wandered off to his room, already absorbed in his comic again. But the question lingered in the air like smoke. After the kids went to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine I didn't drink and my laptop glowing in the darkness. I opened a browser and typed, Securities and Exchange Commission fraud reporting. The page loaded. White background, official government seal. A phone number. A web form. My cursor hovered over the File a Complaint button. If I did this, there was no going back. Malcolm would know it was me. Who else had access to these documents, this information? Warren's warning echoed in my skull. You'll be gone before you can finish the sentence. But if I didn't do this, what did that make me? Another person who saw corruption and chose comfort over action? Someone who looked at $19 million in stolen shareholder money and said, "Not my problem?" I thought about Jackson's question. Why do bad guys always lose in stories but not in real life? Because in real life, good people stay silent. I clicked the button. The form was exhaustive. Page after page of detailed questions. I typed for 3 hours straight, attaching documents, screenshots, the internal memo, comparative valuations, the wire transfer records, the audit report with its convenient omissions. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered. At 11:47 p.m., I hit submit. The screen refreshed. Your complaint has been received. Reference number, 2024 FIN 87634. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark, trembling. What had I just done? The next day was a Wednesday. Nothing happened. Thursday passed in endless meetings. Malcolm was his usual charismatic self, telling jokes in the break room, praising Tasha's work on a contract negotiation. Friday, I started to wonder if the SEC even cared. Maybe they got thousands of complaints. Maybe mine was already buried under more important cases. I checked my personal email obsessively. Nothing from the SEC. No acknowledgement beyond that automated reference number. The weekend crawled by. I took the kids to the park, made dinner, helped with homework. Normal life continued around me while I waited for the hammer to fall. Monday morning, my hands shook as I made coffee. Every email notification made me flinch. Every phone call could be the SEC. Or Malcolm's attorneys. Or HR calling to escort me out. But the day passed quietly. Then Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, I'd almost convinced myself nothing would come of it. The SEC probably investigated major banks and billion-dollar schemes. What was $19 million to them? A rounding error. I was reviewing supplier contracts when my office door crashed open. Malcolm stood there, face flushed, chest heaving like he'd sprinted from the other end of the building. His carefully maintained composure had shattered. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His tie was loosened, top button undone. "Why did regulators show up at our door?" he demanded. My heart stopped. Then started again, too fast, drumming against my ribs. What? SEC enforcement. His voice climbed toward hysteria. They're in the boardroom right now with Douglas and our attorneys. They have a warrant, Leyla. A fucking warrant for financial records. I forced my face into neutral confusion. I don't understand. A warrant for what? They mentioned the Cascade merger specifically. His eyes were wild, searching my face. Who knew about that deal? Who had access to those files? Malcolm, I don't. It was you. Not a question. An accusation. He stepped into my office, slamming the door behind him. You excluded, resentful little, you did this. You called them. Fear spiked through me, sharp and electric. We were alone. He was between me and the door. His hands were clenched into fists. I didn't. Don't lie to me. He slammed his palm against my desk, scattering papers. You're the only one who had the access and the motive. You've been asking questions, digging where you shouldn't. My phone rang. We both froze. It kept ringing. 4 times. 5. Answer it, Malcolm said, his voice dropping to something dangerous and low. I picked it up. Leyla Jefferson. Ms. Jefferson, this is Special Agent Diana Fulton with the SEC's Enforcement Division. We're currently at NewPoint Technologies conducting an investigation. We'd like to speak with you. Could you come to conference room A? Malcolm was close enough that he could hear her voice through the speaker. His face went gray. I'll be right there, I said. Conference room A looked like a crime scene, but quieter. 3 SEC agents sat on one side of the table, laptops open, briefcases full of documents. Douglas Brennan, our board chair, looked 20 years older than he had last week. Warren sat next to him, staring at his hands. NewPoint's general counsel, a sharp woman named Vivian Cross, had her arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line. Special Agent Fulton was in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded me of my high school math teacher. She gestured to a chair. Ms. Jefferson, thank you for joining us. I understand you're the finance director? Yes. You filed a complaint with our office regarding the Cascade Systems acquisition. It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. Malcolm stood in the doorway. I want my attorney present for. Mr. Pierce, this conversation doesn't concern you at the moment, Agent Fulton said without looking up. Please return to your office. We'll speak with you shortly. This is my company. Mr. Pierce. Now she looked at him, and something in her gaze made him step back. Your office. Now. He left. The door closed with a soft click. Agent Fulton turned back to me. Walk us through what you discovered. I talked for an hour. Showed them everything, the original valuation discrepancies, Philip Crane's connection to Malcolm, the internal memo about Meridian, the missing $19 million, the wire transfers to Meridian Consulting, the suppressed audit findings, the pattern of payments that coincided with Malcolm's confidential meetings. My voice shook at first, then steadied. They asked questions. Took notes. Requested copies of documents I'd already submitted but wanted to verify against NewPoint's official records. When did you first suspect irregularities? Agent Fulton asked. The day Malcolm excluded me from the financial review. He'd never done that before. It made me wonder what he was hiding. Did you discuss your findings with anyone internally? Warren Yu. The CFO. He told me to drop it. Said Malcolm was too powerful and I'd only hurt myself. Warren shifted in his seat but didn't look up. Did Mr. Pierce take any actions you interpreted as threatening or retaliatory? He called me into his office. Mentioned that IT had flagged unusual network activity on my account. Reminded me that talented finance directors were hard to find. It was subtle, but the message was clear. Vivian Cross leaned forward. Ms. Jefferson, I want to be clear, this firm will not tolerate retaliation against whistleblowers. If you've experienced any adverse employment actions. With respect, Ms. Cross, Agent Fulton interrupted, Ms. Jefferson is under federal whistleblower protection. Any retaliation would constitute a separate violation we'd be very interested in pursuing. The room fell silent. Ms. Jefferson, Agent Fulton said finally, you should know that your complaint triggered a preliminary investigation that revealed additional irregularities. We've been monitoring certain transactions for the past 3 days. Your documentation provided crucial context and evidence. We've also identified at least 4 other companies involved in similar schemes with Mr. Pierce over the past 6 years. 4 other companies. 6 years. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern. A career. What happens now? We'll complete our on-site review, likely through the end of the week. We'll need to interview several other employees. You may be asked to provide testimony if this proceeds to criminal charges. She paused. You should also know that we're coordinating with the FBI's white-collar crime division. The scope of this fraud extends beyond securities violations. Criminal charges. FBI. The words hung in the air like smoke. That afternoon, Malcolm Pierce was escorted from the building by security. I watched from my office window as he walked to his Tesla, movement stiff with rage or fear or both. He didn't look back. The office buzzed with rumors, speculation, shock. People gathered in clusters, whispering. Some glanced at my office with expressions I couldn't quite read. Gratitude? Resentment? Fear that they might be next? Dennis Kowalski appeared at my door around 3 p.m. Can I have a minute? I nodded. He closed the door behind him and stood awkwardly, hands in his pockets. I was in that meeting. When Malcolm excluded you. I should have said something. Should have questioned why you weren't there. You couldn't have known. I suspected, he interrupted. Malcolm had been weird about the Cascade deal for months. Secretive. Defensive when I asked basic questions about operational integration. I convinced myself it was just his management style. He looked miserable. But I knew. Deep down, I knew something was off. I just didn't want to risk my position to find out what. You're not responsible for Malcolm's choices. No. But I'm responsible for mine. For staying silent. He met my eyes. What you did took guts. Real guts. Most of us don't have that. After he left, I sat alone, processing. More people came by that afternoon. Tasha, apologizing for her silence. A woman from accounting who'd noticed discrepancies years ago but been told to ignore them. A junior analyst who'd been berated by Malcolm for asking about unusual expense categorizations. They all had pieces of the story. They all had suspicions. But none of them had been willing to pull the thread that might unravel everything. I didn't judge them for it. Survival instinct is powerful. Mortgages and car payments and children's braces and aging parents, these things matter. They shape our choices in ways we don't always acknowledge. But someone had to pull the thread. The investigation lasted 3 weeks. SEC agents became familiar fixtures on our floor, interviewing staff, reviewing documents, building their case. 2 FBI agents joined them on the second week, their presence adding a new weight to the atmosphere. NewPoint stock price dropped 14% as news leaked. Business news outlets ran stories about corporate fraud at a rising tech company. Analysts downgraded our rating. Our largest client put their contract renewal on hold pending investigation results. The board called an emergency meeting. Douglas Brennan resigned. So did Warren, though the official statement called it early retirement. Vivian Cross stayed, overseeing the legal response and cooperating fully with investigators. I was called in for 3 separate interviews with federal agents. They were thorough, professional, relentless. Every claim I'd made, they verified. Every document I'd provided, they cross-referenced. They built their case with the methodical precision of people who'd done this many times before. Malcolm Pierce was arrested on a Tuesday morning. Wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy. The news showed him in handcuffs, being loaded into a federal vehicle. His lawyer issued a statement proclaiming his innocence, calling it a misunderstanding and a witch hunt by disgruntled employees. But the evidence was overwhelming. The Meridian project turned out to be a shell company Malcolm had created. The $19 million was laundered through Cascade, kicked back to accounts Malcolm controlled. Philip Crane had cooperated in exchange for a cut, $3 million for his role in the scheme. The FBI discovered more. Malcolm had been running variations of this fraud across multiple companies over the past 6 years. Inflated acquisitions, phantom consulting companies, kickback arrangements with executives at target firms. The total stolen exceeded $75 million. It was greed, dressed up in corporate language and strategic justifications. Simple and venal and depressingly common. The board offered me Warren's position. Interim CFO, with the possibility of permanent appointment after things stabilized. I sat in Douglas's old office, now mine, and stared at the offer letter. Triple my old salary. Stock options. A corner office with a view that made my old space look like a closet. Mia's college fund fully secured. Jackson's future bright and unworried. This was what I'd worked toward for years. CFO of a major tech company by 40. Proof that the long hours and sacrifices and constant juggling of finances meant something. But the paper felt heavy in my hands. Mom? Mia's voice on the phone, calling during lunch. Did you see the news? Your company's on CNN. I saw. Are you okay? Is your job safe? I looked around the expansive office. Safe. What a complicated word. Yeah, honey. I'm safe. Good. Because Jackson and I were worried. We know things have been stressful. She hesitated. But also, we're really proud of you. Kyle's mom told us what you did. That you're the reason that bad guy got caught. My throat tightened. How do you feel about that? Like my mom's a superhero, she said simply. Jackson keeps telling everyone at school that his mom fights bad guys with spreadsheets.